Chill here with Sirius Stella Simone, and while I caretake for a video, Moon Hour, Mercury Day, we got an hour before Saturn. So I'm gonna upload my previous video, and of course, naturally I'm gonna bark because I'm talking about solar energy. Um, yes, I guess Japanese would understand me more, but that was a good meal. Bring it all together. I have been discussing rethinking wealth, whether it was wealth channels, the minerals and the metals, the value of sexual sovereignty, and I want to talk about Age of Air because while, yes, we're only going to have 20 years of the fire and air, outer planets basically, and I am tending to Aries ingressing Taurus in the 50s because that's going to cause a lot of turmoil and chaos within the feminine archetype, but we're going to have feminism standing before that. There's going to be a lot of chaos about the disincluded feminine, and that had already begun around the Me Too. Um, for example, there was an Israeli lawyer talking about the fact that Palestinian women identify more with their national identity than being a woman, or the challenges or intersectionality, basically talking about, hey, for some women, the topic of willing consent is not even a topic that they have arrived at yet, and so on. And I do believe that sexual sovereignty is something that, how should I say that? In spirit and in matter, it's a non negotiable because all the things that create the other type of chaotic things are all aligned with violating sexual sovereignty in boys, in girls, in men, in LGBTQ, and of course in women as well. Violence of women against women is actually being tended to, and I saw a couple of researches that turned to, let's say, mothers and the way that they abuse their children and so on. But at the same time, there is femicide and killing of natural mothers. So that is definitely a topic to address together with birthing, together with cloning projects. And I do see those streams of the conversation taking course. Um, so I think what Aries is going to do in Taurus is really bring about the disincluded women into the forefront. Um, but for that, feminism really needs to hold, and it needs to hold particularly in regarding to sexual sovereignty. And I think that we're going to be addressing the labor conditions and the women, the men and women, but particularly the women that are raped under the production of the simple things that we use in everyday life while fighting for sexual sovereignty. So it's basically going to be sexual sovereignty and production. Uranus in Taurus was almost the last outer planet. I think Neptune is going to be up next. Um, and then probably as Pluto ingresses into Pisces, yes, we're almost in the 30s. Then probably around the ingress of Pluto into Pisces, or the for good ingress, we're going to begin the back and forth of Aries, or Pluto meet Pisces. We're going to begin the back and forth of Aries into Taurus, and that's going to be a significant Earth placement. So we're not done with the Earth placements. Okay, there's the age of fire and air, but we're not done with the Earth placements, and we're definitely not done with the Earth resources, Earth minerals, um, owning land, the irreplaceability of land, even regardless of agrarian society, and particularly when it comes to grounding our nervous system. And so I think the more we begin to have to develop an agrarian society that is water-based, or other type, growing agrarian society on other planets and so on, then we will become aware of the particular energetic signature on Earth, about its pros and cons. So that's something to think about. And the age of air, interwebbing with that, has to do with privacy no longer being something that is sustainable. And this is where acceptance, authenticity, and dealing with a lot of addictions that were based on the belief that one has to do things in private, to protect, um, to use the power of privacy, where we're not really going to be had the only power of privacy. And this is where Pluto is now squaring Aries, but is applying to sextile it, because the only power is going to be creating a lot of chaos while doing something, but then we'll have to surrender the results because it's going to go viral. Okay? So if I just think about the fact that in one of my most frustrated moments, I coined the term laser focused, um, when it came to destroying cities because of sexual sovereignty violation. And then laser focused, I don't know how it got to the point that Mark Rutte used that. And then laser focus became a series, and I called it the Direct from Me, um, sort of to honor that. And then I began to see laser focused literally everywhere. So that was a part of my Neptune square. And that was definitely how something that in time of desperation, Neptune, where we believe we are completely powerless, Neptune, can go megalithic viral, Neptune. And hopefully contribute to miraculous healing. There's the disappointment where it's like, hey, wait, I made laser focus, and at the same time, there's the miraculous healing associated with that, where things that we were even thinking or believing that we were in isolation become actual changes in the world. So, um, when it comes to the age of air, I don't think people will be able to capitalize so much about privacy unless they are put in Neptune situations, or they're being like isolated for some reason, as usually the hard Neptune aspects. I do think that radical acceptance and actually tending to the many solutions to addictions like connection, inclusivity, the ability to speak, and so on, is something that is very important as we proceed. People will not be able to rely on having wealth that is hidden, and this is really 20 years that culminate in grand wealth redistribution. We are understanding that the minimum income that necessitates people to use a digital ID is not the only way to do wealth redistribution, but we also understand that that wealth redistribution is necessary. And so a lot of people that save money, let's say, under the tiles, okay, find out that suddenly they can't suddenly deposit that money. They can't suddenly liquidate that assets confiscated from the oligarchy and so on and so forth. and thus we have nothing to rely on but political culture, and the process of people becoming enlightened in the sense that sexual sovereignty matters in spirit and in matter, um, and reconnect spirit and matter on that level. Now, Aries in Taurus is going to do that, is going to culminate to that, but through a lot of chaos. Uranus was doing a good job of, at least for me, when I was talking about, gold and suddenly understanding gold in spirit and in matter. And I think it was around 2018 when I had my very first tiny gold purchase, which was no more than 50 shekels. Again, really humble beginnings, It is because to gain a lot in a way that is undistributed is posing another challenge when one loses sanity to protect that wealth. And think about the time where the wealth is sanity, which is unfortunately our times. um, and so we have to be generous with generating sanity in people, because the more sane people are, then then the better life is. Otherwise, people have to spend so much energy on controlling people, and in one glitch in the matrix, and it's a nuclear holocaust on literally everyone, which can happen anytime. Um, More things to do with the age of air is the rituals that are done behind things are very visible. So think about the level of conduct. As a person that has been targeted individual for like a decade, um, probably before that, but I'm so neurodivergent that I didn't even notice that. And then I can say that there are so many things I've come accustomed to, um, particularly around transparency, that carry the hidden blessing, and that is that I'm really prepared for the age where there's no privacy. People are going to have to honor sexual sovereignty in spirit and in matter, because, first of all, extortion calls are nullified when everybody knows. And trying to normalize what is, let's say, trying to normalize rape causes people to become aware. Even as a woman, one could think, hey, why not, I don't know, be a working lady and be a succubus and make a ton of money and deprive men of their wealth and so on and so forth. Um, well, to be a succubus, I would have to lower my frequency to the level that vacuums the life force out of other people. That's not the state of existence that is appealing to me. And that would make me dependent on other people's originality and ability to generate well-being, and the only access I would have to them, because would be either going so much so into the astral, which is a lot of, you know I would have to put so much energy into that it's just like not economic, and also I wouldn't enjoy life. Like, I would hate humanity all the time, and the more I learn about what I don't like about humanity, the more I understand how much energy was invested in putting humanity in that situation. And so in that essence, I'm like, hey, if people are all in all sexually sovereign, supportive, and so on, or want that, then there is faith in humanity, and the amount of energy it takes to make people into raping one another is basically so tremendous that it retrieves the faith in humanity. it also raises awareness and consciousness to the fact that the families that people love to hate were those disincluded people and had, while being elite, things done to them that are beyond inhumane and cause them to lose humanity. It's not that they are, oh, they're a different race, a different this, well, many different races, but it's essentially the process of torturing people to extinction that causes them that much of loss of faith in humanity to be doing those things. So in the age of air, think about it. So many people are being tortured that they have floaters and they have personalities all over the place, and they can't really get a hold of all the personalities. So people see, what's happening in the Pentagon, what's happening in the White House, what's happening in everybody's bedrooms. Um, People have invasive thoughts of other people's thoughts. Gigi Young mentioned that when she was a model and she was secluded and she began to hear everybody's thoughts. Um, I think there are some conversations that I still say with my thoughts because it's easier because because it's kind of like, hey, that person is so sensitive to the thoughts that are just things that I can explain in my mind. um, and that can change the atmosphere, but also other people. And for me, being a targeted individual is like that permeability really prepared me to be completely authentic with myself in others, because I was prepared to the fact that they're gonna know very early on, and I had to understand myself in a ways and gain self-trust way before I think other people that don't like the digital ID threat, because they don't like to explain themselves, but also that a lot of people are going to have to explain themselves to themselves. Um, that the most of the people that try to fumble with somebody's image um, are usually people that have like extortion cults behind them, and they try to think about the Mars Leos. They try to make somebody look a certain way, and then it comes out of them because the other person is just going to shine their shine, and the cracks in the image that they wanted, and to maintain someone's image they really need to have control over everything. And this is why people grant those things to people to be celebrities, um, because celebrity is about visibility. And then, if you think about one of my favorite singers is Mariah Carey, and Mariah Carey was married to Tony Motola, who was controlling her so much so that he didn't let her have a haircut to expose her forehead. And she has a long, and it is very relatable because I also have quite some forehead. And, and it was that much control, and she managed to beat that. One of the first ladies that managed to beat that, and basically divorce someone who, while contributing to her career and supposedly visible success, was also really draining on her life force and life energy with all that control tactic. Um, so when you think about the excuse of visibility to, um, I think Beyonce also dealt that with that. She sang about Jay-Z doing that actually. I think that I'll send you a postcard, was about being criticized for every single thing, and the excuse of having the image being perfect is something that can really get people under the control of the people that would know how to supposedly caretake for the other person's image. And I have a Uranus in the 10th house, so that's kind of like I have to deal with not being able to control my image. And I also have Neptune, which means that people are going to ideate me, they're going to be disappointed of me, and then they're going to wonder if I'm real. They're going to experience sudden miraculous healing around me that might not even be attributed to me. Um, And that's just life. Okay, that's just a part of life. um, but this is also where um, I had to contend with having a lot of surrender regarding how I'm being perceived, and also what are the implications of that perception. um, yeah, so let's say attended to the discourse around sex work, around the Me Too, and everybody, of course, immediately connected that to thinking that I was or am a sex worker, including sex workers, by the way. And then I just played along with them because I'm like doing the veil of ignorance, like it's not supposed to be, like it's not supposed to matter, because everybody is entitled to their rights and to their sexual sovereignty. And then I learned that, about more and more things about the trafficking and stuff. Um, and so people were really trying to send a certain image. And again, there's always some people not, and some people countering those people. They're trying to send some image and hold some image that supposedly would get people feeling more comfortable to harass me. And particularly if they saw it as revenge or whatnot, I'm like, well, that's a really stupid. That's taking one's own grave, because all these people that think that I'm one thing and find out that I am, um, but then a monster to people that even think about sexual sovereignty violation, then they're gonna come to the people that told them something and turned out to be another, and they're gonna have problems. That's like when it's setting out a certain image on someone, and they find out that not only they didn't get what they want, but they got their respect tarnished all over the place. And it's like, and they can't even require for respect because they were disrespectful. They're like, why did you send me to some woman who is like a feminist raging bull that is willing to do a nuclear holocaust over over those things? And that begins to, this is exactly how that age of air. And when people think about social credit score, then this is where, some people, I'm with the Neptune people, I'm exactly the type of people that people think they're like this, they're like that. And then, the raison d'etat is like, hey, if you disinclude me, it means that I will have to be, it means that you're subjected me to be, I don't know, in human trafficking, which means that to escape that subjugation or that threatened subjugation, I would have to find if I can ally up with people who would drop a bomb or do a terror or kidnap bankers, or and tell that to a bank teller. And then they're gonna have to confront with the fact that, wait, if I'm afraid of being trafficked, it kind of means that I don't sell sex. Oh, well, if she's not a hoe, then then what is she? Who is she? What happened? Wait, what happened? So there are gonna be a lot of people at the front lines of banking systems that are gonna be targeted, because some people went disincluded from the credit score, not even knowing that they were disincluded because somebody put out a name or put out something on them, and then they're just going to fight so they wouldn't be subjected to human trafficking. And just think about what such a misunderstanding can do. Um, Also, when there are people who paint somebody as a gold digger, and that lady just tried to, stand in her power to have financial power to not withstand financial violence. And then, I remember when I shared a post, um, was about relationships, and it was about, I will only leave you for my own sanity, my own well-being, my own this, my own that. And I was like, I just found that so relatable. Kind of like, I would not leave you for somebody else, but only for my own sanity. And I naturally shared that on my Facebook. And apparently, there were people that were devastated because their entire image was built on painting, in that case, me in a certain way. Um, and sometimes it's just humans, like person was left out, and they feel left out in the cold. And I'm like, well, the social engineers can do so much dumb fuckery that people can feel that. Um, but I also have to protect myself and my sanity. And then anything that they were tangled with begins to be exposed by the merit of me, tending to my well-being, or me buying the grape seeds tincture that I need to treat fungal infection, and literally telepathically hearing someone who up until that point I considered my ex-bestie saying that this particular thing is not good for them. And I'm like, well, it can't be the money because I've been buying so many other things for my health. Why that? And I'm like, well, that tends to the fungi. And they wanted me to be sick so that I will have problems, and then it would cause me to have teeth problems. And then they thought that I would further subjugate myself to being raped to supposedly treat my teeth, where the core issue is that yeast overgrowth of yeast is basically a result of sexual boundary violation. So the answer to my teeth health has to do with sexual sovereignty. Really attempts to mutilate my clitoris, as I talk about that. Um, just and that just showed how somebody I thought was my bestie got entangled in such things that can no longer be described. Like, for real estate. And then I begin to think about things that I considered innocent, like showing me a song about real estate where a woman had to either sell her organs or be a prostitute in the street supposedly for real estate. And I'm like, well, actually, the only point of having an apartment, other than being cozy, is about having that safety. But then the street has to be safe, and so it's like when you don't have, like, when the street is safe, a person can live in the street or live in an RV. And I was traveling with my mom, um, and we were mostly traveling in the car, and we didn't consider ourselves homeless. At least I didn't, because I was traveling the world, and that's normally a more comfortable way to do that. Every once in a while, stop at a hotel, but not having to, but having the place overall safe. And now it's difficult because of the weather conditions. We're not in the United States. There it's difficult for other reasons, like death and concentration camps. Um, but that's something that was just normal. And if the streets are safe, then a person can, I don't know, spend a couple of nights by the sea and rethink themselves before they choose to go to an apartment or enter a contract that they're not authentically themselves in that contract. But if people think that people would do all these weird things for real estate, then that's really about people trying to sell other people, which is exactly what I thought was bestie was in line with doing. Um, Even though I was providing all the actual viable solutions that could have gotten him off that railway and actually manifest wealth, but I guess he would have to deal with things that he was subjugated to by the very orthodoxies or the very Masons and I guess that pushed him to the devil side or whatnot. Or there were weird threats, um, but that was really, all in all, very, very weird. And this is how that got unraveled. So those things that are relying on secrecy, um, not being discovered, confusion, people, or thinking that they can blackmail people. Those things are, um, those things are really, types of frequencies that try to get people to sell their souls, or to have other people trying to sell other people. Is kind of like, those things, those scams are being exposed, and the people that are not used to, or that did not understand that the whole point of trying to make them do something is that so that they can be extorted. The way out of crime is full accountability and full authenticity. And we have people like Alondra, that did that. And when a person takes on an oath under torture, they're not really taking on an oath. Okay? An oath is invalid because anything that's under torture is invalid. And to deal with the reality of being targeted individual, they will already deal with having to do all these things. And so if they're already dealing with being a targeted individual, then the path to accountability is actually, um, is actually more economic. But if they really had the stranglehold on trying to see power and completely losing their self-value or whatnot, then that can be more problematic trajectory. And that would eventually, this is something that would eventually derive away people like me, who, all in all, are quite benevolent and generous with people, as long as that's not taken advantage of in a way that risks my being able to be benevolent. So this is what I see for the age of air. Stuff is going to be exposed. And particularly, what is it's not just age of fire and air, it's also age of air. We have to ask ourselves, what air? That's the air of Aquarius, which is architecture, masonry, and the air of Gemini, which is civil society, children, tricks, and cunningness. And while tricks and cunningness will be able to be available, um, that's the tricks in Gemini are a two-edged sword, particularly for the people that, you know, how should I say that? Gemini is a dual sign, and it's a dual people sign, and it's the twins. So people can think kind of like the good twin and the evil twin. But no, the polarity doesn't have to be around that. And yet certain polarities might be around that. And when it comes to the trajectory of rejuvenating the masonry, then it's about real estate. Everything that we build, real estate, think about it, real estate is both the natural resources, the buildings, having a social media, if you think about Meta, is a real estate. And Gemini is where, although Uranus is going to be just for 7 years, Sedna is going to spend 4 decades, which means that she is going to be co-present with Aries ingressing into Taurus. Like, I can't stress further the fact that human trafficking is not a good idea. Okay? Like, it's not something that I can stress further. And the way out is, again, accountability. If you even think about how open Andrew Tate has been, and while he's been very smug, um, the fact that he's been so transparent, literally talking about how the Romanian corruption closed his club, basically a sex trafficking and gambling club in COVID, because they were asking for so much protection or bribery. Literally exposing that when a woman is being abused, she becomes manlike. Like, and the fact that he is just, even by chance, being so transparent is probably, first of all, why he got arrested. But it doesn't necessarily place only against him, because that transparency is on a frequency that is closer to the frequency of learning from one's mistakes. Okay? Now we have to also consider the fact that in the world that he grew up in, that was not considered a mistake. In fact, those that would be seeing that as a mistake would be annihilated. And this is where we think about the world that we would like to design, no longer being a world where only the people that completely sold their soul or tortured out of their soul basically own the world. And that can only be done under the guise of confusion, blame shifting, secrecy. No point to try to do genitalia mutilation. Thank you. Is it like a request for me to talk about Islam? Because the MK Ultra Targeted Individual Program is also doing forced sex surgeries, according to the testimonies of targeted individuals. So, does that mean that they're Islamic? I mean, I don't know. Um, but that's something that, we won't have gender affirming care without having ethical medicine. And that's another thing to do with the LGBTQ rights. And those that go for gender affirming care need to also allow representation for the people um, that want to do the retransition but can't do fully the retransition, or are not aware of the side effects that are more to the terminal spectrum. And I'm being incredibly cautious with saying irreversible when it comes to medicine. But yeah, cutting a person's penis, for example, is pretty irreversible, and unless they have some tissues that regenerate. I'm sure we have solutions for those things, or regrowing, regeneration, that is biological and so on. But then that is creating the encryption challenge, um, and putting technology inside, the bodies of people. Um, Again, technology is already in the bodies of people, but also, um, yeah, the questions of will and consent, and the importance of those things, especially in an industrialized society, do matter. Like, they do have implications. In the age of air, that's another idea, because Aquarius is so humanitarian that it forgets sometimes the personal credit. And although it sextiles Aries, which is the sign of sovereignty and ownership, and if I think about the kibbutz and the moshavs in Israel, which was a unique form of settlement, as far as I know, it's probably not that unique, but this is what we are taught. Um, and this is where people were supposedly settled in a cooperative, and then it got privatized, and people became literally millionaires. I don't know, I don't think billionaires, but literally millionaires, because of their estates. And those were not the settlements that were attacked. Mostly those were not the ones that were attacked in 7th of October. That was a different trajectory of people that got the right to do agriculture In fact, the places like Shumrat, where there was a ritual rape of a woman by children that were destined to be real estates and have business and be business elites. Kfar, what was the name of the place? Wait, let me open my Facebook because that's important. The real estate that's associated with ritual abuse, Epstein rings, and so on. And I shared that. Let's see. Oh, now they remember to be. This is. This is shared here, and this is. Yeah, Karmei Tzur. It's basically considered a settlement. Um, but there was ritual abuse in that place. And the ritual abuse is about wealth consolidation concerning natural resources and real estate, with the emphasis on natural resources. Arad, unfortunately, is suffering from that because of the vicinity. Um, when we were taught in politics about the curse of the resources, we were taught about the government no longer relying on taxation to fund itself, and those that are against taxation also need to take that into account. But we weren't taught about the fact that the curse of resources can be, hey, they found oil in your city. That means that there are going to be a lot of human sacrifices and ritual tortures of people to either make them flee or try to have them used in wealth consolidation. And so every time I heal, I come back weirder. Um, so yeah, those are some of the lands where such wealth consolidation practices takes place in Israel. I think Gaza is like self-explanatory. Look at this 22 lot of fortune as I speak. Um, but this is also a part of the age of air. Like people won't be able to hide those rituals, to hide those things, or to hide the weird verdicts that surround them, and usually go unnoticed. But hey, if they're going to, like, let's say they want people to have a digital ID. My prediction is that around the digital ID, we're going to have a booming. You see, suddenly we have the broadcasts of the Gen Zers. Um, because people used to go on demonstrations without being filmed. The revolution, in fact, was mostly untelevised, but then we suddenly see that. And so what happens is that they are going to try to tempt people, but then they become even more aware of the social ID, yeah, digital ID, dumbfuckery. And as a person that tends to political assassination prevention, there are stories that I just can't. There are sudden eurekas now. You understand when a person, you see, when I was doing aromatherapy, the people that got to me were the people that know, like those people were abused by the psychologist, abused by the psychiatrist, and I'm like, I just learned a course in aromatherapy and some astrology. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And then we find stuff, and then the person finds stuff, because it's like you think about the ethics of meeting, like consultation and so on, and that thing's going entirely off the window because people are like, their psychologist was targeting them. Their psychiatrist was targeting them. The psychiatrist raped them. They see the future ahead of time. They can barely eat or drink. And I'm like, well, I'm definitely not like certified to treat that, but it's the people that are certified that deserted them. And if I'm just going to tell this person, hey, there's nothing I can do for you, then, tomorrow it's 9/11. Then we try to do something, and then they find the answers in themselves, and I'm like, okay, my god. Okay, that's with me literally going through, yes, I did my thesis proposal and so on, but going through 2 courses of aromatherapy, some apprenticeship. Then they targeted my teacher because she recently bought a house and then she had to target me. And I'm like, with me, that dumb fuckery stops. And the implication was quite so. When we, when I was doing astrology or aromatherapy, then usually there's connection between the self and the journey of the self to for the other people. And I knew, of course, because I was my life at risk, and I was like, okay, let's turn to political assassination prevention after I saw the case of Peter R. de Vries. And the tactics of, like, there's just so exactly like the murder of, like, women who divorce and so on. And then it adds another chapter to the inner journey and people at the other side going through that journey. So there are things that are just so eureka to me, relatable to me. Even I know that those people are the ones that didn't get out of the death camp. So some of them very likely would be on Epstein list or death row list. And that is a tremendous juncture. Is Baden Corvin out, is what I'm saying. And then, turn to political assassination or turn to a cold case of political assassination. And you're like, okay, you reach a certain place where you're like, okay, I'm not really sure what happened there. I think I need to just let it be. um, and so and and so yeah. And add to the fact that I'm neurodivergent, so I don't pay attention to that. So this is this is another facet of just things that I think about, and I have these eurekas about, but in my personal lives. So yeah, that's and most of it is genuinely things that, I think that, those memes of the neural activity until it's like intergalactic. And I think they're probably running around memes like that on me with Shirley saying this, Shirley saying that, Shirley saying that, but it goes entire intergalactic when Shirley says, well, I can't say it. Look at this midheaven on Israel's Chiron. Okay, I think we don't have too much time before it's Saturn, or did it already? I'm going to hold this here. And I think I got a little bit of the spirit of the Age of Air and why people won't be able to do stealth with the way they used to. Here is Mercury 22 in just ingress to the 22 degree of Libra, ruled by Venus. When I talked about the political assassination prevention insights.